Hey guys, tonight we're going to step onto warm stone floors beneath a roof that smells of pine smoke and boiled rice. We're traveling to ancient Korea, into homes where the fire didn't crackle in a fireplace or flicker in a hearth. It flowed beneath your feet, and this fire, it didn't just warm your toes, it whispered stories through the stone. This is a tale of Ondol, a heating system older than some entire civilizations, one that warmed floors, food, and hearts all in one go. It's the kind of quiet genius that doesn't need a patent, just a long winter and a clever ancestor. And yes, let's be honest, if you had to survive a Joseon winter with nothing but a haymat and no Ondol, you probably wouldn't make it past Tuesday. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is over there. I love knowing who's out there, gently slipping into sleep with history humming in the background. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a stone platform. The sun has just dipped behind the ridge, and the air is beginning to bite. Not harshly, not cruelly, but in that persistent way winter likes to announce its presence. You shuffle forward. Your shoes are thin. The path is packed dirt and memory. But up ahead is something promising. A cluster of tiled rooftops, thin trails of smoke curling upward like sleepy dragon sighs. As you near the entrance of a modest wooden home, you're greeted not by words, but by warmth. Not hot air blowing in your face, no. This warmth starts from the soles of your feet and rises slowly, like trust. You step onto the threshold and feel it immediately. The floor is warm. Not aggressively so, but deeply, stubbornly, like it's been thinking about you for hours and just finally decided to welcome you. There are no radiators here. No vents, no ticking thermostats, just stone, carefully laid, thick slabs sitting atop a hollow belly of fire and intention. This is the Ondol. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't flicker or snap. It hums, it waits. And when you lie down, on it, perhaps after brushing off your travel cloak, perhaps after being handed a cup of barley tea, it greets your back with a slow exhale of comfort. You look around. The house is modest, a single-room layout, low wooden beams, paper-covered windows filtering in pale light. The center of the room is empty. No chairs, no beds, no clutter, just the floor. And it is alive. You're not the only one who notices. The dog in the corner has strategically claimed the hottest tile. The child reading a scroll has migrated gradually toward the wall, where the heat pools strongest. The grandmother closest to the kitchen sits smiling, partly from wisdom, partly from warmth. And here's the thing, the heat didn't start in this room. It started somewhere else, under the kitchen, under the fire used to cook rice, grill fish, boil medicinal roots. That same fire found a new purpose after the meal was done. The smoke it exhaled slithered through narrow tunnels built beneath. The stone floor, it warmed the house with its leftover breath. You shuffle your feet slightly, toes pressing into a spot warmer than the rest. A secret, a memory, a place where the stones have heard centuries of stories and decided to store a view in the grout. You sit down, then you lie back. The floor doesn't just support you, it cradles you, and as your head settles on a rolled cloth pillow, you realize something. This house was built not from the top down, but from the heat up. Because in this place, warmth wasn't a luxury, it was a philosophy, a quiet rebellion against the cold. And tonight that rebellion is yours. You exhale and the stones exhale back. You stretch out a little more now, shifting your shoulder to feel a different tile. Warmer, just slightly, and in doing so, you discover something unexpected. That this floor is not uniform. It breathes in gradients, like a very shy cat choosing where to curl up. The heat has preferences. This is no accident. The Ondol was never just about building fires. It was about building flow, and under your back, right now, lies a maze of intention. Picture this. Beneath the stones are hollow flues, low, narrow tunnels carved into the clay foundation like veins beneath skin. When the cooking fire is lit in the attached kitchen hearth, the agungi, the smoke doesn't rush upward like a western chimney. No, it travels sideways, then under, a clever rerouting, an ancient detour. You trace it in your mind, the path of the warmth. From the fire pit, the smoke glides beneath the floor, meandering through the maze, losing heat slowly, thoughtfully, before it exits out a chimney at the other end of the home. It's like the smoke is being milked of its warmth, gently, thoroughly, respectfully, before being released into the air. And you're lying right on top of that, which is a little strange, if you think about it. You're cozy and dozing, off above a controlled smoke tunnel system, a low-grade underground dragon politely exhaling its last breath beneath your spine. But it works. Oh, it works beautifully. You sit up for a moment and glance around again. No metal grates, no furnace hum, just clean lines, smooth stone, a stillness so complete, even the tea steam seems to float more slowly. You remember someone once said, "The best technology is the one that disappears." And this Ondol, is invisible genius. Your back knows it's there before your brain does. Here's the other fun part. Ondol wasn't only functional, it was spatial poetry. The location of the agungi, the kitchen, wasn't random. It was usually slightly sunken off to the side, often managed by the older women of the house. And they weren't just cooks. They were engineers of airflow, masters of the underfloor map. They knew which spot on the floor would be warmest by dinner time, which guest to seat where, which corner would stay toasty through the night. Some even claimed the house had a mood, that you could tell what kind of day it had been by how the heat traveled. Did the smoke linger too long under the sleeping mat? Did it rush too fast toward the flue? Was the wall corner colder than usual? If so, perhaps the fire hadn't been lit with intention. Some scholars, yes, some scholars still debate this, believe there were spiritual aspects to it too. That heat, like breath, needed to be balanced. That a rushed fire made for a restless house. That a slow, well-fed fire created a peace you could feel in your dreams. You lie back again, eyes closed, and for a moment you wonder what kind of fire warmed this floor today. Was it built calmly by practiced hands? Did the cook hum while tending the rice pot? Was the flame fed steadily with care because it feels balanced? Not hot, not cool. Just enough, a kind of heat that doesn't scream, "I'm here," but instead murmurs, "You can rest now." You reach down and tap your palm gently against the stone. It hums back, not in sound, but in that soft, slow radiance that ancient things seem to have. And if you listen carefully, not with your ears, but with your shoulders, your ribs, your kneecaps, you might hear the smoke pass below you. Just for a second, like a thought the house decided to whisper through stone. This isn't just a floor, you think. It's a hearth in disguise. And you, well, you're right where you should be. You wake, or maybe you never quite fell asleep, to the quiet realization that warmth has weight. Not a heavy weight, not something pressing down on you, but a comforting kind of weight, like a familiar blanket, or a memory that makes you sigh instead of speak. The floor still hums beneath you, and you shift just enough to notice how your body has learned its map. You've settled into the warmest square. Of course you have, and now you begin to wonder, who else knew this warmth? Who else sat right here, centuries ago, cradled by this same quiet heat? You don't have to imagine very far, because once, upon a time, this floor didn't belong to a time traveler like you. It belonged to a family. A real one, with names and squabbles and chores and dreams, and their social status? Well, that might have been measured by how warm their floor was. Let's say you were a yangban, a member of Korea's aristocratic elite. Your home was likely elegant, sprawling, the walls made of hanji, and the courtyards carefully swept. Your ondol wasn't just warm, it was designed to be warmest in the room you occupied, naturally, and if you were hosting guests. You didn't just offer them food or tea, you offered them prime heat zones, strategically located, pre-warmed, like assigned seats but thermal, because warmth in ancient Korea was currency. It told people, you are important. It told elders, you are honored, and maybe most powerfully, it told children, you are safe. Even within the same house, there were heat hierarchies. Closest to the kitchen, warmer, closer to the chimney, cooler, and everyone knew it. You could trace the power structure of a household just by looking at the sleeping arrangements on a frosty night. Grandmother curled near the wall, her back against the warmest stones. Uncle sprawled slightly farther from the source, but close enough to enjoy the residual heat. Children wriggling in and out of warm zones like puppies in a sunbeam. The eldest son, probably right at the peak spot, unless, of course, Grandma hadn't moved in a while. Then he knew better, and the servants, well, they'd sleep closer to the door, not because anyone said so, because the floor said so. It's funny how stone can remember things people never write down. Some stories say that wealthy families would intentionally design their ondol systems to include subtle heat shifts, to gently encourage guests to stay in one area and not wander into private corners of the house. The architecture nudged the behavior, no velvet ropes needed, just cool tiles and polite social pressure. And even today, in some restored Hanok houses, you can still feel it. The warmth moving like a quiet tour guide, telling you where to go, when to pause, where to sit a little longer. You shift your weight again. The stone responds. You imagine a scholar once sat here, composing poetry about plum blossoms and lost friends. Or perhaps someone younger hiding from chores, face buried in a scroll they definitely weren't supposed to be reading. And all the while beneath them, a dragon of smoke curled lazily under the floor, content to warm dreams and secrets alike. It's easy to think of fire as dramatic, loud, hungry, but not this fire. This fire is quiet, thoughtful, recycled. It's the kind of fire that understands its job is not to consume, but to comfort. You exhale, and somewhere beneath your back, a tunnel of clay remembers how to hold heat just long enough to remind you that you belong here, just like they did. Your back sinks just a little deeper into the warmth, and you realize something that makes you smile. Even here, even now, you are, quite literally, sleeping on history, and not metaphorically, not in a poetic, the weight of the past, sort of way. No. You're lying on slabs of stone that were specifically designed to remember heat, to store it, to give it back to you, hour by hour, like the world's oldest heated mattress. And this mattress, it doesn't sag, it doesn't squeak, it doesn't come with a remote, it just works. And now let's talk about sleeping. Because sleep in a traditional Korean house didn't happen on beds. No creaky wooden frames, no springs, no 10-pillow. Pillows. You'd roll out a a padded mat, directly on the floor, maybe with a little cotton pillow if you were fancy, maybe just your arm, and the floor. The floor was your blanket. You didn't lie down to sleep, you melted down to sleep. You can imagine it. The house quiet, wind tapping gently at the hanji windows, the last embers of the kitchen fire long since gone cold. But under you, the warmth lingers. It always lingers, like someone left behind a memory just for your spine. Children fell asleep mid-sentence, grandparents nodded off during stories, and lovers whispered things that only stone could hear. Secrets sealed between the bones of the house. Now picture, winter, the kind where your breath frosts in the air, and stepping outside feels like being licked by a frozen fox. Everything is sharp and shivering. But inside is heat, not the kind that blasts your face or dries your skin. No, this is patient heat, the kind that starts low and spreads slowly. The kind that waits for you to notice it, the kind that doesn't ask for thanks, but quietly accepts your weight as its purpose. And here's the most delightful part. The Ondol was never just for sleeping, was for eating, for reading, for singing and thinking and planning marriages and plotting mischief and listening to the rain until the rain gave up and went somewhere else. Because when the floor is warm, everything else becomes optional. Furniture, who needs it? Chairs, extravagant. You live on the floor, you stretch on it, nap on it, sip barley tea while tracing the pattern of your life, one tile at a time, and that's what made Ondol special. It didn't just change how homes were heated, it changed how people used their homes. Everything shifted downward, from altars to dining, because the warmth came from below. And you followed the heat. Gravity had nothing on Ondol. And historians? Well, some of them still argue, of course they do, about whether the Ondol was a heating invention, a cultural symbol, or a way of life. Honestly, it was all three, because when the heat rises from the ground, you don't just feel it in your body, you feel it in your choices. And tonight, your choice to lie down here with the smoke coiling under your spine and the stars just beginning to blink awake outside feels very, very correct. This isn't just a floor, it's a philosophy you can nap on. You stretch your toes just barely and feel the warmth pulse beneath the ball of your foot. It's like the floor is checking in on you, like it wants to say, "Still here? Good. I've been saving this spot just for you." And then the smell hits you, softly, subtly, the ghost of rice and chestnut steam. It curls through the air like a memory still clinging to the rafters. You sniff again. No mistake. Somewhere, someone has been cooking, and that, dear listener, is where the magic truly begins. Because in ancient Korea, warmth and food weren't two separate acts. They were one continuous ceremony, the fire that steamed your rice. It's the same fire that warmed your bones. The agungi, the kitchen hearth, wasn't just the place you boiled water, it was the heart of the house, the womb from which heat was born and sent spiraling beneath the floors. You picture it now, a small cooking pit, often sunken slightly into the floor, lined with clay and soot and wisdom. A woman, probably someone's grandmother or someone who had earned the right to be called that, tending to it with practiced grace. She doesn't measure, she knows. Her hands are clocks, her ears are thermometers, her nose, possibly, a minor deity. She lifts the pot lid just once, just enough to let out a sigh of scent, sesame oil, garlic, maybe a whisper of anchovy. Then she stirs the fire. Not too much, not too little, because here's the thing, too much flame and the rice burns. Too little, and your toes stay cold all night. It's not just cooking, it's thermal diplomacy. And this, again, is no accident. The design of the Ondol system was ingeniously efficient. As the fire burned to cook meals in the kitchen, the hot smoke was funneled through a winding channel under the floors of the main living space. The longer it traveled, the more heat it released. By the time it reached the exit chimney, the smoke was cool, gentle, almost apologetic. You turn your head slightly on your makeshift pillow and imagine it now. The hot breath of cooked rice sneaking beneath the stone, beneath your shoulder blades. Warmth that began in garlic and ended in dreams, and it was seamless, elegant. You didn't have to think about it, you just were warm. That's the real beauty of it. The Ondol didn't demand your attention. It offered comfort without announcement, which is more than we can say for most modern heating systems. Let's be honest, a radiator has never made you feel emotionally supported. Some houses even had an intentional rhythm to this exchange. Morning, heat up the hearth, cook breakfast, warm. The floors, midday, let the sun take over. Evening, another small fire, another warm room. The floor was always just a few steps behind the kitchen, and always a few steps ahead of the cold. And sometimes, especially in winter, families would gather not just around a meal, but on top of one. Picture this, a single large cooking session, early in the evening. The fire is roaring, the rice is steaming, and by bedtime the floor is still radiating dinner's ghost. You lie there now, letting your thoughts swirl like steam above a clay pot. You imagine that the heat you feel tonight is maybe, just maybe, the last echo of some ancient dinner. Maybe a child laughed too hard and spilled soup in this very spot. Maybe a father fell asleep mid-conversation, bowl still in hand. Maybe two lovers once lay side by side here, hands just barely touching, warmed more by proximity than by embers. And now, your body, absorbing the same ancient cycle. Food to fire, fire to smoke, smoke to stone, stone to skin. It's alchemy, it's architecture, it's home, and you're lying in the middle of it, listening to the faint murmur of history underneath your back. Not bad for a heating system, not bad at all. You wake gently, if such a word can be used when you were never fully asleep, to the sense that something has shifted. Not dramatically, just subtly, like a page has turned somewhere deep beneath the house. And your body knows before. Your mind catches up. The warmth has moved. It's still there, cradling your spine and curling around your ankles, but it's no longer static. It's migrating slowly, like honey down an invisible slope. You stretch your legs and notice one side is warmer now. The floor has tides, and you start to realize just how much thought went into making this happen. Because the ancient architects of the Ondol, they weren't just builders, they were sculptors of air, carvers of flow, whisperers of smoke. They understood something that modern thermostats forget. Heat wants to move. The question is how to let it. The answer, channels. Deep, deliberate. Unser dug into the earth beneath the floor, coated in clay, angled with precision. These weren't haphazard tunnels. They were measured to the millimeter, some sloping ever so slightly downward, some curling in lazy arcs. Smoke from the kitchen fire would follow these paths, guided by nothing more than gravity, temperature, and human intention. It's easy to imagine a craftsman kneeling in the dirt, smoothing the walls of a future flue with bare hands, humming softly, knowing that no one would ever see his work, but everyone would feel it. This invisible craftsmanship was passed down not with blueprints, but with memory. A father teaching a son to watch the curve of the chimney elbow. A grandmother murmuring that the corner under the sleeping mat needs just a bit more clay. And here's where it gets almost poetic. Some of the oldest Ondol systems included tiny inspection holes, little access points where someone could peek inside the tunnels, make sure there wasn't a blockage or a cold spot. These were often covered with flat stones or wooden plugs, nearly invisible once the floor was done, like secret doors in a fairy tale, or trap doors for ghosts of smoke. You run your hand along the floor now, imagining where those tunnels lie beneath. They don't go straight, they meander, they take their time. Like the heat itself, they're in no rush. They've learned patience, from mountains and from rice, and yes, some scholars argue, of course they do, that the curvature of these channels wasn't just about heat distribution. It was also about breath, about the house itself breathing in warmth and exhaling stillness. You let your fingers trace the grout between two floor stones. It's smooth, cool at first, then warmer near the edge. Someone once laid this stone by hand. Someone once knelt in this exact spot with soot on their elbows and clay under their nails, muttering calculations and prayers at the same time. And their math, it still works. Hundreds of years later, your shoulder blade is toasty because of a decision made by someone with no calculator, no blueprint, just instinct, skill, and maybe a little stubbornness. And it's not just about keeping people warm. It's about keeping peace, because think about it. If one room was too hot and another too cold, arguments, whispers, passive-aggressive rearrangements of sleeping mats. But when the floor itself carries the conversation of heat calmly across, the home, everyone listens, Everyone settles. You sigh deeply, the kind of sigh that reaches down into your ribs and says, "Yes, this is how it's supposed to be." And the floor answers, not with a sound, but with a shift, a pulse, a traveling warmth that reminds you nothing here is static, not even the stones. The house is alive. And you are the luckiest kind of guest, the kind who's allowed to sleep on secrets. You shift slightly, not because you're uncomfortable, but because curiosity has a way of tugging at your elbow, even in the softest of moments. Your hip finds a new warm patch, your elbow brushes against a seam in the stone, and now you're wondering something rather specific. Why does the corner by the wall always seem warmer? You think back to earlier. The grandmother. Remember her? Sitting by the wall, her shawl perfectly draped, the steam from her barley tea curling upward like... She trained it. She didn't pick that spot by accident. She picked it because she knew. Here's the secret. That wall. It's not just a wall. It's the final stop on the fire's long journey. Let's break it down. The Ondol system, that underfloor labyrinth of warm, smoky breath, doesn't just meander aimlessly. It starts at the agungi, the fire pit, in the kitchen, and it ends at the gultuk, the chimney, usually embedded into the wall at the edge of the house. So what does that mean for heat? It means the hottest, most persistent warmth. The one that's traveled the whole path, lingered, thickened, grown wise. It gathers near the chimney wall. It's the retirement home of heat. Slower, deeper, and, let's be honest, slightly smug. And that's where Grandma sits. It's practical wisdom, really. The wall doesn't leak warmth like the middle of the room. It holds it, reflects it, becomes it. Over time, the stone near the wall remembers every winter better than the last. And if you ask a child in a Hannock house where to nap on a cold day, they'll tell you by the wall under the window, just where the floor makes you forget it's winter. You imagine it now, a slow morning, steam rising from soup bowls, light filtering in through paper windows, and everyone subtly jockeying for position near that golden stretch of floor. No words needed, just a kind of floor diplomacy. And yes, scholars still debate this too. Was it intentional? Were homes designed to favor elders? Or did elders just figure it out faster than the rest of us? Either way, the tradition stuck. The warmest spots go to the oldest hearts. And when Grandma claims a corner, you leave it, you offer it. That's not just warmth, that's reverence. In radiant form. You glance at the wall now, wondering if anyone has ever written poetry about heated corners. You hope so. Because if warmth could speak, it would write sonnets to the chimneys that let it linger. And maybe this is the real genius of Ondol. Not just that it heats you, but that it teaches you who should be warm first. The tired, the wise, the ones who stirred the fire before you were born. You slide a little closer to the wall, just a little. You're not stealing the spot, you're borrowing a whisper. And as your shoulder touches the stone, you swear. You feel a pulse of something old, not heat exactly, something more like a blessing. You've moved now, settled fully into the warmth near the wall, and it's a different kind of heat. Not hotter, not exactly, but deeper, like it has roots, like it knows something about you that you haven't remembered yet. And here's the thing that surprises you. This quiet system, this whispering floor, wasn't reserved only for kings or scholars. It wasn't hidden behind palace gates or buried in ancient blueprints. It was everywhere, from the thatched cottages of rice farmers to the elegant hammocks of the Yangban elite. The Ondol curled beneath homes across the Korean peninsula like a forgotten constellation of comfort. Sure, the materials changed. A noble's floor might have been cut from sleek stone, fit with architectural precision. A poor family's might have been mud brick and clay, patched lovingly through winters with whatever they had. But the idea, the design, the breath of the earth carrying warmth beneath your body, that was the same. The king and the shepherd both listened to the same hum, and you can't help but smile at the democracy of it all, that under your back, this same warmth once cradled people who never spoke the same words, who never met, who never dreamed the same dreams. But they all slept easier because the floor remembered how to hold them. Some of the grander estates even designed their Ondol systems to flow across multiple rooms. Each chamber had a different tone of heat based on its proximity to the fire. Children's rooms were closest, guest rooms farther away. A message, perhaps, or a gentle boundary. You are welcome here, but not too welcome. And the palaces? Well, you can imagine. Systems so complex, they made the smoke do ballet. The royal court during the Joseon dynasty had entire quarters lined with Ondol floors, advisors warming their backs as they discussed grain tax, scribes copying edicts with their toes tucked, under silk wraps, all while the heat whispered politely beneath the floorboards. But even in the humblest homes, the principle was the same. You cooked a simple dinner, maybe millet, maybe cabbage soup, and the heat from that meal wound its way under your family's sleeping mats. A kind of thermal inheritance, one warmth serving two purposes, or maybe 3 or 4, because warmth in this context wasn't just about survival. It was about space. Think about it. When the floor is the warmest place in the house, everything important happens down low. Meals, naps, arguments, apologies. Everything becomes a little softer, a little more grounded. You don't tower above anyone when you're all sitting cross-legged on the same stones, and that too was part of the Ondol's quiet influence. It pulled everything downward, physically and emotionally. It leveled the hierarchy of daily life. It brought people closer. You shift slightly. The floor answers with a gentle push of warmth under your ribs. You remember hearing that in the old days, visitors would instinctively find the coldest part of the room and settle there. It was a show of humility, a silent way of saying, I'm not here to take your warmth. I'm here to earn it. And when the host insisted, no, please sit closer to the wall, that gesture wasn't just hospitality. It was ceremony, a kind of social warmth to match the physical one. You think about that now, how much meaning can live in where you're invited to sit, and how in homes warmed from beneath, that invitation always begins at the floor. So, you lie back, you listen, you wonder if the same flues that warmed a scholar's feet might once have carried warmth to a child in a mountain hut. Same breath, same fire, same stone, and now you, warmed by the same design, humbled by the same silence. The warmth is steady now, not flickering, not shifting, just there, like it always intended to be, a low, loyal presence beneath your back. Like an old friend who doesn't need to speak to make you feel heard, and as you lie still, letting that sensation wrap around you like steam from a morning bowl of soup, you find yourself wondering, what did the rest of the world do? Because surely other civilizations had winter. Other people had cold toes and stiff joints, and grandparents who liked to nap at 2 p.m. And yes, they did. But none of them did it quite like this. Let's start with the Romans, masters of baths, mosaics, and conquest. They had the hippocaust, a system of raised floors and hot air pumped beneath them. Smart, elegant, and most often used in communal. Bathhouses and elite villas. It was grandeur in stone. But it needed slaves to operate, constant attention, and it was often reserved for the few. Then there were the Japanese. Their tatami mat lifestyle didn't rely on underfloor heating. Instead, warmth came from hibachi braziers or kotatsu tables. Cozy, yes, but localized. Intimate. You could warm your knees, maybe your belly, but the rest of you had to negotiate with winter. In China, kang beds, large brick platforms heated by connected stoves, were common in the north. Functional, absolutely, but they were raised separate, not the whole floor. You stepped up to the warmth, then away again. But in Korea, the warmth was everywhere. It was the floor, not a feature. Not an accessory, a foundation, and that's what sets the Ondol apart. You never left the heat behind. You lived in it, walked on it, slept on it, shared meals and stories and silences atop it. No chairs to separate you from the source, no hearth in the corner claiming all the heat like a needy dog. Just floor, even, inviting, honest. And while other cultures had to gather around their warmth, Koreans let the warmth gather around them. That's the beauty. It's not just technological, it's philosophical. Because when you don't have to chase comfort, you slow down, you settle, you sink. And when everyone in the house is warmed from the same surface, when the queen and the child and the grandmother and the scholar all lie on the same heated stone, it shifts something in the soul. The floor becomes more than structure. It becomes language, a language of presence, of invitation, of grounding. You breathe slowly now, in rhythm with the hush of imagined smoke curling through unseen tunnels below. You imagine your breath sinking with it, your lungs drawing in what the floor exhales, a quiet exchange between body and house. And you think, maybe this is what home really means. Not a place with walls or locks, but a place that warms you back. The floor under your shoulder blade gives a slow, quiet sigh of heat. Or maybe that's just you. Hard to tell anymore. You've blended into it now, like a second quilt laid over stone. Or maybe the stone has wrapped itself around you. You've lost track, and that's part of the charm, and as your breath steadies, your hearing sharpens. You begin to notice something peculiar, the sound of warmth. Not fire crackling, that would be too dramatic for this story. No, it's subtler than that. It's the way the silence changes near a warm floor, a kind of velvet hum, a hush with weight. Like the room itself is holding its breath, but comfortably. You reach out, run a palm along the stone. It doesn't speak in words, but it resonates. There's a low vibration that's not a sound, not a temperature, but something between the two. You felt this before. In music, you know the moment. When a low cello note hangs in the room just a second longer than expected. Not loud, just thick with emotion. That's what the warm floor is doing. It's playing the architecture like an instrument. And now you wonder, did the ancients hear it too? Not just the warmth, but the timbre of the house. In some records, there are tales of how families would detect cracks in the Ondol flue, not by sight, but by listening. The heat moved differently. The room echoed off. The silence became too sharp or too hollow. Something about the harmony went wrong, and that's when they knew, time to patch the clay. Because in these houses, warmth had a melody, and that melody, you could drift. You turn your head slightly, imagining the original builders, the silent craftsmen who adjusted the height of each stone, the pitch of each flue. They weren't just chasing warmth, they were tuning the floor, like luthiers for clay. And then, of course, there were families who learned to interpret the meaning of warmth. You remember reading, or maybe you just want to believe it, that children were taught not only where the hot spots were, but when they'd arrive. That in winter, you'd press your cheek to the floor, wait for the hum to pass beneath you, and know that Mama had started cooking rice. The smell was a signal. But so was the temperature beneath your chin. And in that moment, you didn't just know that dinner was coming. You knew that life was still happening, that someone lit the fire, that the world hadn't forgotten you, that breath and smoke and stone were still dancing their invisible duet just for your benefit. Somehow, all of that was wrapped in the silence of heat. You lie still now, listening with every part of you. You don't hear music. You feel it, in the same way you feel the difference between being alone and being held. And in the quiet, with the floor murmuring its song just beneath your ribs, you finally understand warmth isn't just temperature, it's trust. You've stopped thinking in hours, stopped tracking time in any way except in waves of warmth when they reach your fingers, your knees, the back of your neck. The Ondol has become your clock, its rhythm, your heartbeat, and now, just as you begin to think you've heard everything this floor has to offer, it teaches you one more thing. Heat isn't just comfort, it's medicine. You shift slightly, your spine sighing against the stone, and you realize how much lighter you feel. Not just relaxed, restored. As though every ache, every stiffness, every little complaint your body filed during the day has been processed. Like the floor quietly took them from you one by one and tucked them away somewhere warm. Because for the people of old Korea, the Ondol wasn't just for staying cozy in winter. It was part of the body's healing ritual. It was a treatment. Your grandmother might have said it first. Lie on the warm floor. Let it fix you. And she'd be right. Traditional Korean medicine often spoke of balancing internal energy. Ukigi, whatever name you gave it, and cold they believed was dangerous. It could sneak into your bones, your joints, your belly, cause problems, upset balance, leave you sluggish or ill. But the floor brought balance back. Elderly villagers would lie directly on the warm stone to soothe aching backs, sore knees, knotted shoulders. Children with stomach aches were wrapped in blankets and nestled against the heat. Postpartum mothers rested there to regain their strength. No fancy treatment plans, just time and temperature and trust in the earth's breath beneath them even. Now modern spas in Korea still imitate this. Jjimjilbang, the public bathhouses, have hot stone rooms where people lie flat and let the heat work through their muscles. You'll see them asleep in rows, arms folded, faces calm. It looks like stillness, but it's healing. You press your palm to the floor again, imagining centuries of people doing the same. Some praying, some meditating, some just breathing until the pain let go. And you wonder, how many colds were kept away because someone spent the afternoon napping on warm stone? How many arguments were never spoken because the heat lulled the tension into silence? How many quiet tears dried in the time it took a tile to cool? Some scholars, yes, always scholars, still debate whether Ondol contributed to longevity in rural villages, lower blood pressure, better sleep, calmer lives. It's difficult to prove, but then again, science doesn't always measure what matters most. Because you don't need a study to know the truth of what your shoulders are telling you. Right now, this floor heals, not with fanfare, not with magic, just with attention, just with steadiness. And as your body unwinds one vertebra at a time, you realize you're not just lying down, you're letting go, letting the floor carry the weight of one more day, one more thought, one more ache. And in return, it gives you warmth, soft, slow, endless. You don't open your eyes. You don't need to. Everything worth seeing right now is happening below the surface. Not the floor's surface, your surface. The warmth has crept into your skin, your joints, your breath. It moves through you like ink through paper, slow and purposeful. You begin to feel less like a person lying on the floor and more like someone being written into it. Absorbed gently into a story that has been unfolding beneath feet and mats and meals for centuries. And it's in this moment that you remember something strange, that there were poems written about the Ondol, not grand odes, not epic verses, about glory or gods, just quiet, intimate words, about heat and home, and how the floor sometimes felt like the only thing in the world that understood you. You smile at that. Because how many floors earn poetry? How many slabs of stone are remembered fondly, not for being walked on, but for holding someone when the world was too loud? You picture a scholar, maybe in the late Joseon period, wrapped in cotton robes, ink brush in one hand, the other gently. Pressed to the floor, he's not writing about war. He's not interested in political intrigue. He's composing a verse about how the heat slowly curls up his spine like a cat returning home. Maybe the first line goes, "The floor breathes beneath me. I exhale into its patience." Or, "Winter waits at the door, but I do not rise. The stones have sung me still." It's possible no one ever read these lines aloud. that they lived and died on scraps of rice paper now long returned to dust. But the feeling remains, pressed into the grout, carried in the seams between slabs, passed along not by ink, but by silence. And silence is what this system was best at. The Ondol didn't crackle like a fire, it didn't groan like a radiator, or hiss like a pipe. It whispered, or maybe it didn't even do that, maybe it just was, and that was enough. And you start to wonder if you've been misusing the word quiet your whole life. Because this isn't silence. This is presence, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. It just stays, unmoving, unbothered, steady. You open your eyes barely. The paper windows glow faintly. Somewhere, far off, there's the sound of a breeze. But down here, next to the earth, next to this ancient exhale of stone and smoke, everything is still. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel the need to do anything with it. You just let it be, like the poet, like the floor. You haven't moved in what feels like hours, and not because you're trapped or tired, but because the idea of moving now feels unnecessary, pointless even. Why reach for anything when everything you need is already cradling you from below? And that's when the final understanding begins to take shape, not in your mind, but in your chest, in your breath. Because this warmth, this floor, it isn't just a convenience. It isn't just good engineering or clever use of clay. It's a belief system, not in the way a religion asks for prayers or a philosophy demands answers. No, the Ondol asks for nothing. But it teaches everything. It teaches you that care can be invisible, that the best comfort is often beneath you, not in front of you. That warmth doesn't need to be earned or justified. It just needs to be there. And slowly, you begin to understand what some elders meant when they said the Ondol didn't just heat the house. It carried the soul of the family. Because when you live this close to the earth, this close to heat, to breath, to each other, you begin to behave differently. You sit lower, you speak softer, you listen more. Children learn patience by sitting in silence on a warm floor. Elders fall, asleep mid-sentence, confident that nothing cold will reach them before morning. Lovers lean close, not because they have to, but because the floor suggests it. Even grief feels different here. There are stories, gentle, whispered ones, of how families would gather on the Ondol during mourning, not standing around in black coats and stiff shoes, just sitting, cross-legged, hands folded, letting the warmth press into their backs like the world saying, "I'm still here, I'm still holding you." And in those moments, it's said that some believed the floor was absorbing the sorrow, not erasing it, just carrying it for a while, letting the living rest. Some people scoff at that idea, call it romantic or silly or sentimental. Let them, because you'd be lying here now, wrapped in heat that's older than memory. You know the truth. This floor has emotions, not loud ones, not flashy, but slow ones, deep ones, the kind that remember every footstep and forgive each one. You rest your hand flat against the stone and whisper, not aloud, but inside yourself, "Thank you." And the stone, it doesn't respond, but it also doesn't need to, because you already feel its answer, always. You blink slowly just once, and when your eyes open again, the light has changed. It's softer now, cooler, the kind of light that comes at the edge of dusk, when day has almost left the room but hasn't said goodbye just yet. And for a moment, just a breath, you wonder if you've gone back in time because everything feels timeless. The paper windows glow with a pale gold. The wood beams above you creak just slightly, like they're stretching after a long nap. And beneath you, the floor is still warm, a little less than before, perhaps, but steady, loyal, like it's not ready to let go of you yet. And that's when the memory of modern life starts to creep in, just the edge of it. Emails, alarms, shoes, speed, all the things that exist above the ground, but not here. Not now, because even now, in cities filled with glass and concrete and too many parking lots, the Ondol still lives. You've probably felt it before, maybe without knowing the name. That soft, radiant heat underfoot in a modern Korean apartment, the way the tile warms your socks in winter, the strange relief of lying down on the bathroom floor and realizing it's not cold. That's Ondol's legacy. Of course, the fuel has changed. The firewood is gone, so is the smoke. Now it's pipes and wires and thermostats, radiant heating, they call it. But the soul, still there. The idea that heat comes from below, that your foundation should take care of you, hasn't disappeared. It's just adapted, like all the best traditions do. Even Korean floor plans still reflect this legacy. Furniture low to the ground, sleeping mats instead of mattresses, rooms designed not around windows or doors, but around the floor itself. Because the floor isn't just something you walk on, it's something you trust. And even in a high-rise, in a city of blinking lights and elevator buttons, that quiet warmth still rises through the soles of your feet, like a secret you didn't know you needed. Maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's wisdom passed through the bones, maybe it's just what happens when a culture decides, not by law, but by love, that heat should rise slowly and touch everyone, that no one should have to beg to be warm. You shift again, slowly, pressing your fingertips into the stone like you're memorizing it one last time, because you know what's coming. The story is winding down, the night is arriving, but before it ends, you take one more moment to feel it, the way the Ondol makes even goodbye feel warm. The room is nearly dark now. Not the kind of darkness that feels empty, but the kind that wraps around you like a second blanket. Gentle, deep, quiet as snowfall. The heat beneath you has faded just slightly, like it's preparing you for the moment when you'll rise and return to the cooler world above. But for now, it lingers, soft, reluctant to leave. You're lying still, not just in body but in thought. The day has drained from your muscles. Even your worries seem to have curled up like a cat beside you, purring faintly, no longer loud. And now, only one thought remains. This warmth is a legacy, not the kind you inherit in coins or contracts, but the kind you lie down inside of. The kind that's been passed hand to hand, home to home, through smoke and clay and stone. You think of all the people who have felt this exact sensation before you. The press of warm stone at the base of the spine, the ache in the shoulders, easing into silence, the breath that deepens because it can. A farmer in the mountains, pulling off boots stiff with frost. A scholar in silk, sliding open a scroll by lantern light. A child curling around a pillow, dreaming of plum blossoms. A mother, sitting cross-legged, sipping tea, listening to rain on the eaves. And now, you were body in a room that could be yesterday, or 500 years ago, or tomorrow. Still, safe, held. You feel the floor beneath you like a slow tide, still giving, still forgiving, still there. And as your breath sinks lower into your chest, your eyes soften, and your thoughts, the last flickering ones, begin to drift like leaves across a warm pond. The Ondol does what it was always meant to do. It carries you, not just into sleep, but into something quieter than sleep. A kind of remembering, a kind of returning, a sense that you are not alone, not cold, not forgotten. The stones whisper their final lullaby, a song older than history, softer than soot, warmer than fire. They do not need you to thank them. They only need you to rest. So go on, let go. Let your back melt into the memory beneath you. Let the warmth do what it was always meant to do. You've done enough. You are enough. And now, sleep.